educational success is an outcome with broad and far-reaching ramifications at every developmental step in a young person's life. The capacity and competency to absorb and communicate information is at the heart of everything that we do. Literacy is also a great predictor of a host of young adult outcomes. And we have a fantastic panel this afternoon to explore literacy as a pathway or light to oneness. We are joined remotely by Nancy Brynelson at the Statewide Literacy Director's Office at the California Department of Education, and Bonnie Garcia from that same office at CDE, and Michael DeFrancesco, Director of Educational Services and Human Resources at the Calistoga Joint Unified School District, and Barbara Nemko, who is the Superintendent of Schools at the county office in Napa. And our first panel presentation will come from Stephanie Gregson, who's the Deputy Executive Director of Teaching, Learning, and Leading Center at CCEE. Please welcome our next panel.
It's always great to be after a panel where there was a mic drop. Thanks, Carla. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Literacy is a shared goal. Why? Why should we have literacy as a shared goal in California? Literacy is a road to human growth and the means through which every human can realize their full potential. Right? There's a lot of stats that I could quote here, but I'm just going to quote one. In California, we have the lowest literacy rate for those age 15 and older of 76.9%. Sit with that for a moment. 76.9%. Does that mean that every human being in California is realizing their full potential, is thriving to the best of their ability? No. That is why literacy is a shared goal for all of us. And as you heard, I'm joined by Bonnie Garcia and Nancy Brynelson from the California Department of Education and our partners, the county office, Napa, and the school district, because we have a collective responsibility to ensure that every student and every human being is literate to realize their full potential. So I'm going to start with kind of outlining, and Bonnie, next slide, please. Nancy and Bonnie are virtual, so I get to talk to them virtually. So in order to start, we have to understand where we're at in California with literacy. And we need to reflect on the opportunities that we have for collaboration and integration to make sure that the support, resources, and lessons learned are accessible to every single local education agency in the state that impacts the student experience at the classroom level. So I'm going to start this off by sharing the landscape, and then my colleagues Nancy and Bonnie are going to speak to the opportunities and connection around literacy, and then Barbara and Michael will talk about what it looks like at the local level. Next slide, please. So I bumped into Barbara in the bathroom, because, you know, that's what we do. Switch to this one? Oh, okay. Mike can't hear me, so I need to switch to this one. Is it on? All right. So I bumped into Barbara in the bathroom, because that's where the best planning happens, right, Barbara? Yes. And we were talking about this, and I told her, I said, Barbara, there are 19 different literacy initiatives happening in the state. And she goes, what? I said, yes, 19. This is a list of them. About 17 or so happened in the past 4 years. I wonder why. But think about this. If you look at the list, and I kind of don't want to read them to you, but there's a lot. There's the one-time funding pieces. There's one that's been with us since, I think, 1968, the California Writing Project. We have the California Reading and Literature Project. We have Educator Workforce Investment Grant for special education and EL Rise. We have some that are directly around high-quality online instructional materials with literacy resources. We have the Literacy Roadmap. That's one of the newest ones. Oh, let's see, what else do we have? Oh, we have $15 million in reading and literacy supplementary authorization incentive grants. We have one-time learning recovery emergency block grant. It also has a slice of literacy there. That's just maybe half of them. Next slide, please, Bonnie. This next slide shows all of the different leads for each of those initiatives. California Department of Education has a main role in ensuring that the money gets out there. We have county offices that are leads, Californians Together, CCEE. We lead the Learning Acceleration Systems Grant with 3 county offices. CCEE also has a role in external evaluation in some of these initiatives. But each one of us has a role and a responsibility in these 19 different initiatives. Now, a question for you. Do you think that all of these leads talk to each other on a regular basis? Yes, right? Do you think there's some duplicative work happening there? Yeah, I can pretty much guarantee it. And that's where the work needs to happen. That's the human element that needs to happen in breaking down the barriers of these 19 different initiatives to impact students in the classroom. Next slide, please. This just gives you a sense of idea of the initiatives and where they're touching across the state. This is at the county level. You're going to see there's some blank areas. Some of our rural areas don't have access to some of these initiatives and some of this funding and opportunities. That's a problem. Next slide, please. These little tiny dots, those are the school districts that have access to these different initiatives and grant funding opportunities. Are there over 2,000 dots there? No. That's a problem. We have an access and opportunity problem with 19 different initiatives and a lot of money. You cannot say we do not have enough money going into literacy at this moment in time. But the problem is that we're not talking to each other. We're not leveraging the opportunity to learn from each other and to ensure that every district and every county office is learning and has access to the supports and resources available from each of these initiatives. And so Bonnie and Nancy are going to talk about where are opportunities, because we are determined, Bonnie, Nancy, and I, we're a trio here, we are determined to break that barrier and get all of these leads together and start talking about what do we need to do better.
Hi, Bonnie and Nancy here. And Nancy will share, and you can barely see me, but Nancy will go ahead and start sharing. Nice to be here with everyone.
Thank you for having us today. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about what our opportunities are to bring together these various literacy initiatives and really where we think the nexus of control is and how we should be addressing this. We want to start with saying that California is not starting from zero. We have good solid policy that dates back to when our standards were adopted and a framework was developed and approved by our State Board of Education in 2014. And since 2014 was actually a groundbreaking framework in that it lays out how English language arts and English language development should be taught, one of the only states in the country that it has a document that addresses both of these areas. We also see other work done at the state level and approved by the state board, the English Learner Roadmap. Then the CDE published the dyslexia guidelines. We have a comprehensive state plan. And more recently, we have new standards at the Commission for Teacher Credentialing for teacher preparation and teaching performance expectations. That's what teacher preparation programs have to do and what candidates have to demonstrate that they know and are able to do. And then, as Stephanie said, some of our most recent initiatives are around creating a literacy roadmap. Now, there's one clue that's intended to bring these various initiatives together and to bring coherence. And also a piece that many felt was missing, and that is legislation to enable the state to identify instruments for students in kindergarten, first and second grade to determine if they have reading difficulties. So this is something that's starting now, and a list will be available to school districts by the end of 2024. So that's where we're beginning. But let's talk about what our lenses are. And I think there's a lot of commonality for all of the work that you do and that we're doing. And that is, we're really focused on equity, diversity, inclusion, providing instruction that's asset-based, that's culturally and linguistically responsive, affirming, and sustaining. You have probably heard of universal design for learning, the idea that we're starting so that all children's needs are met, all students are able to succeed. And then we also have another framework, the multi-tiered system of support. Many of you probably participate in that, where we're looking at what is it that we're doing at the very beginning, the best first instruction, or some call that tier 1, supplemental support for children or students who are not benefiting from that best first instruction, and then intensive intervention for those who've not benefited from the supplemental support. The idea is that this is planful, that we're monitoring students, and that we know where they are. We start with a clear idea of what it is we need to teach, and then we're keeping track. And then here's a term that's probably one you've been using today and will for the rest of this conference: comprehensive. A comprehensive assessment and assessment systems and data-driven planning. And that really applies to all the services that are provided to families and community members and students. In addition, we have goals in this state to support and promote multilingualism and biliteracy. Students are able to earn on their diplomas a seal of biliteracy if they pass certain goals. And that's a value that California has, to really honor the richness of the cultures and the linguistic assets that we have available to us in this state. So along with that, we need to serve students who are multilingual or identified as English learner students and make sure they receive English language development. Similarly, we need to make sure that students with disabilities or with dyslexia or at risk of dyslexia also have instruction that's appropriate and are served. And with those are those guidelines that were developed in 2017, and structured literacy is a model that we're using to talk about students and those who may have reading difficulties. And not surprisingly, we have to consider students' age, their development, their social emotional learning, their families, and community engagement. I'm a former principal and district level administrator. Bonnie is and we're both former teachers. She's a former director in special education in a special education local planning agency, or area, I should say. And so what we know is that we need not only to be attending to all of these pieces of the curriculum and instructional program, but we also have to attend to their family members, their own well-being, socially, behaviorally, et cetera.
It's a community We need to leverage our community and use families and the rest of the community to help our students build their literacy skills. So we see this as a really big opportunity for us to be able to leverage all of the work that has been going across the state.
So in the next slide, you won't be surprised to see that we are really thinking of this in a comprehensive and, if you will, holistic way. So first of all, at the heart of any educational enterprise is curriculum and instruction. So let's just talk about that for a moment on the left side of your screen. It needs to be based on standards, evidence-based, comprehensive, and integrated. That framework I was talking about identifies 5 themes that are that intersect across both ELA literacy and ELD. So you see there foundational skills. Those are all the pieces about phonemic awareness, phonics, text reading fluency, meaning making, being able to make sense of text, understand what it means as they read, as they listen, as they write, language development, effective expression, being able to write, speak, present effectively, and know what makes for effective expression, and then content knowledge. We're not just reading stories, although we love stories and literature, but also we are reading to learn, and we're also writing and discussing. So all 5 of those themes are at the really center or core of what we're doing. Recent legislation, you saw the slide that had literacy roadmap, also makes clear a couple of things, because there's been, there's nothing more controversial in education than how to teach reading. Perhaps it's how to teach math, but we're not talking about that today. And these last 2 bullets on this side of the screen, explicit instruction in phonics, phonemic awareness, and for those of you who may not be aware, that is the ability to perceive individual sounds and to manipulate those sounds, like at to make mat, and then connect them with letters. That's phonics. Fluency, that's being able to read at an appropriate rate and with some expression and accurately. And then not only decoding, but also encoding. That means actually being able to turn our ideas into print, to connect the letters that we recognize with the ability to actually form those letters and to create messages. And that's also in addition to developing vocabulary, comprehension, writing, speaking, and listening skills. And these terms, these 2 bullets are taken directly from that legislation. So California's path to literacy is clear. We know what we're supposed to be teaching all the way from transitional kindergarten through 12th grade. But how are we going to make this happen? As Stephanie laid out, we have a lot of initiatives. And so what we would say is our overall goal, of course, is improve student performance and engagement. That has to overarch everything. Everything we do is in aid of making that happen. And so now, what is it that needs to happen at a school site and within a school district so that we can achieve that improved performance for students? We need to look at how it is that systems of education can leverage all that funding, all those resources in those 19, 20, however many initiatives there are to provide effective curriculum, effective teacher professional learning, and support for those teachers. As someone who's been in this profession a long time, I'm very worried about the level of support that teachers are not receiving, and that we support them professionally through coaching so that they can be as effective as possible in their classrooms, but that the community supports them and that all the other community supports are available to support the students and families of those in their classrooms. Go ahead, Bonnie.
No, I want to note this is our last slide, but just if you notice everything that is on the slide, it's all a part of that comprehensive system that Nancy talked about before. In order to improve student performance, you need the professional learning, you need the support, you need your leaders, you need that infrastructure, you need to select those assessments and resources. So this is almost like a bullet point of a list of bullet points of all the things that you would need in order to have a comprehensive system at your school site. So if you're from a school, this is what I would take back. And if you're not from a school, and if you're a community member, a parent, taking it back to your school's leadership and asking them, where are they at with all of these, and possibly even asking how you might be able to provide some of that support.
Absolutely. So what we're saying is that it doesn't really matter what the different funding pots are. What matters is that we have a vision for what schooling is and all of the supports that need to exist at the school site and in the district to make that happen, and to leverage those resources, that funding, to make sure that all those things are in place, that we have a system of assessment, that we are using data to plan instruction, that infrastructure includes not only specialist teachers to work with children who may be having difficulty and to coach other teachers, but also individuals who do outreach to the community to support enrollment and to support attendance, health supports as well. So one big message is exactly as Bonnie said, at the site level, at the district level, we need folks to really pull those things together and leverage them for this common vision. And then at the state, we support that. And these are really the last 2 points on this slide. Our common objectives for our initiatives and for reporting on these grants, because the legislature wants to know that the money they gave us to accomplish these things, and there's been a lot of money, more than I've seen in many years of my career, but it's the result of the pandemic. But we need to know to what degree these programs are succeeding. And we need to bring leaders together in communities of practice across the state. But first and foremost, it's that vision, it's that system. Every school needs a library, every school needs rich after school and before school programming. We need good nutrition programs. You get my drift.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, we've left you with a heavy lift and lots to do, but this is what we haven't even had a whole year in our positions as statewide literacy directors. And
there's been a lot happening, I can say that.
Yeah. So that is what we'll leave you with, and what we are out and about promulgating and working with individuals like Stephanie and like Superintendent Nemko from Napa County.
I'm going to stand up because it's hard to have a lot of energy when you're sitting on your rear end. So, and we've all been sitting for a long time. I would like to start with the end in mind. We've heard lots of emotions up here, everything from frustrated to pissed off. And I'm here to tell you I am hopeful. And I say that, thank you. I say that I have been a professional educator for more than 50 years. I started teaching at the age of 19, And I know you can all do the math, so please at least look a little bit surprised. Have the grace. And I'm still here. So picture me, 19 years old. I walk into PS 13 in the Bronx. Not in the Bronx, I come from the Bronx. PS 13 in Elmhurst, Queens. It's my first teaching assignment from the New York City Board of Education. I'm greeted by a principal who says, hello. Oh, you're Barbara? Well, we have 2 open positions, one in the 6th grade and one in the 7th grade. But we have a more mature candidate for the 6th grade. So now I'm offended, because I don't realize he just means older. So yes, he had a middle-aged person who he put in 6th grade, thank God, because those kids were bigger than I was, and I got the 2nd grade class. He handed me a set of keys and a piece of chalk and basically said, good luck to you. I took the keys, I went to the book room, and who was there but Dick and Jane? That's what was on the shelf for 2nd grade. So I gathered them up and I took them in the room, and my first class comes in, and you want to talk about diversity. 40 kids. They didn't have class size limits at that time. 40 kids. They spoke 17 languages, 4 dialects of Chinese, Italian, Korean, Israeli, you name it. I mean, it was madness. I spoke English. I had no idea what to do with them. IDEA hadn't been invented. That was 73. So I had all these kids who were special needs kids. We didn't have a name for it. The only thing that we said about dyslexia was the kid can't read, we don't know why. And they said, go forth and teach them. So I formed my 3 reading groups. How many of you have ever been teachers in the K-12 system? You remember the reading groups? You have the bluebirds and the robins and the eagles or whatever. And you have to keep the bluebirds and the robins busy while you're sitting with the eagles, and then they go back, and nobody's really paying attention to the seat work you gave them, and you're trying with 40 kids to keep the noise down, teach these kids to read. So you won't be surprised when I tell you I went home every day and I cried, because I had no idea, and what I was doing clearly wasn't working. But as Bonnie said, you have to look at it through each of our own lenses, because our lived experience is so powerful. Well, my lived experience was that my mother read to me from before I was born. I'm sure she was talking into her belly. And as soon as I came out, there were books all the time. My favorite thing to do was walk to the library, come home with a stack of books. I was read to probably 2 or 3 times a day. So I came to kindergarten by 2 years old. Aunt B was dragging me around to all the neighbors in the building to say, listen to her read. She's so smart, listen to her read. I had no idea you had to be taught to read. So just hold that thought in your mind. It wasn't working for my kids. I still didn't know what to do. I finally went to the library, and in despair, I got a book called Why Ivan Can Read and Johnny Can't. And guess what they talked about? They talked about phonics. So I went back and I tried doing phonics. And that worked a little better. The only problem was they didn't know what they were saying. So they could pronounce some of the words because I taught them how to say the letters, but they still didn't understand. Many years later, I had a big epiphany. My nephew Max was 2 years old. I was visiting, and he and his mother were having a conversation. And it was a rich conversation, spoken in paragraphs. Max, today what we're going to do, we're going to go downtown, so I think we'll get you a snowsuit because it's pretty cold out, and then we'll go to shop and we'll get you some new pants. And Max responds with, where are we going to go for lunch? And they're having this very rich conversation, and I suddenly had a flash. I looked ahead to Max arriving in kindergarten with all this rich vocabulary, all these experiences that he had, and meeting up with some kids who didn't have all of that, all those rich experiences and all that vocabulary. And that didn't seem fair to me. Today we talk about needing to level the playing field, but that wasn't an expression back then. The other thing that was going on were the reading wars. How many of you remember the reading wars? Not so many. You're all so young. Bless you. So in the reading wars, we had whole word, and we had phonics. And whole language was very popular in those days. And so it didn't work. But how could it not work? And so we went back and forth. And even today we know so much more. And what do? We take poor Lucy Culkin and we pillorize her and we practically treat her worse than a serial killer because she was promoting whole language, which we thought worked. The good news is I was fortunate enough to be introduced to people from the Chartwell School. If you don't know the Chartwell School, it is a private school for dyslexic children. And they came up with methods, specific techniques and strategies that help children learn phonics. And it works. So we went and visited, and I thought, oh, this is fantastic. And then I discovered there were only about 8 kids in the class. And I said, well, that's really easy if you have 8 kids in the class. Show me this in a real school. So they did. If you haven't visited R.O. Hardin School in Hollister, get thee there as quickly as you can, because they are using the techniques from what we now call the science of reading that were developed not only with folks working with dyslexic kids, but by people at UCSF doing neuroscience, looking at the brain and seeing why it works when it works. The other epiphany that I had, let's go back to Max and all his language, was what are we doing with our preschool kids? How do we give them the experiences? Because the kids that we are teaching today are not the kids I was teaching in the 60s or the way I was taught in the 50s. They're different. They don't come with all of these experiences in language. And I remember a teacher in Napa telling me, we have very pedestrian families. And idiot me, I thought she meant they were boring. What she meant was they don't have cars. So their experiences tend to be limited to the places they can walk. Well, if that's what your experience is, your vocabulary is limited to what you see in the area where you can walk. So they're coming to school, and if I teach them phonics, it's going to be right back what I was doing when I first started. I'll teach them to say words, but if you don't know what the words are, if you don't know what the meaning is, you're still not reading. Again, I was fortunate to meet somebody who had developed a program of digital early literacy. This particular program is called Footsteps to Brilliance. I'm not promoting it. I'm not a salesperson. But the idea was that kids who aren't read stories, perhaps because their parents don't have the time, don't speak English, don't have a lot of books in the house, whatever reason, digitally, the book can read the stories to the kids. And not only does the book read the story to the kids, it's now the book, of course, on a Chromebook or an iPad or a computer, doesn't matter, but as the word is read out loud, it is highlighted in the color red. So the words are there, highlighted as it's said out loud. And because it's in English and Spanish and expanding to other languages, you can tap and switch it from English to Spanish with a tap. So the parent can read the story first to themselves in Spanish and then tap and have the children read it in English. And that was almost like a miracle, because parents kept telling us, oh my God, I've learned so much English because I'm using this. But the other part that was really exciting is that as the story is reading itself out loud, if the child taps the screen, for example, in the story Holly Hides, you tap the screen and the little boy is counting while Holly hides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Kids like that. They are empowered because you can tap different things on the screen and different things will happen. If there's a cow and you tap it, it might go moo. Well, how much fun is that if you're 3 years old? That's pretty exciting. And so our kids who have been through digital early literacy come to kindergarten so much better prepared. because the science of reading is not just about phonics. It's about comprehension, understanding, having literacy, and being able to enjoy. We don't only want to make them sound out machines, we want kids to enjoy reading too. It's one of the great gifts that we have. And they can't enjoy it if we make it boring or dull or punitive, or they're frustrated, or all the many things that tend to happen. So we applied and we got a grant that we call Literacy for All, and all the districts in our county are part of it. And we did 3 days of training over the summer. And again, it was an all-in thing. We were fortunate that not only all our districts were there, but 4 of our superintendents sat in on all 3 days of the training. Now, any of you who've ever done teacher training, you know that situation where you go to do something, and the teachers are here, and all the administrators are on the perimeter of the room waiting to make their escape. And what message does that send to our teachers? When the superintendent sits there and is involved and engaged in the whole thing, you know that's going to work. So that's been very powerful. The other thing, we will be working, we haven't started it yet, with the Sacramento County Office of Education on a grant to prepare teacher coaches. Because it would be wonderful if we could have a coach in every school who could work with teachers and help them when they run into difficulty or it's not working with particular kids. Now, if we really want to align things, we're preparing people who are already in the profession. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we brought that into pre-service training so that our teachers came to us already well-versed in the science of reading? And that's something that we're hoping that we'll be able to do as part of our grant, so that we are all on the same page for once, and we stop having to fight over which is the right way to do it. We're all going to do it a little bit differently, but we're going to do it with the same elements and the same strategies. And if I had had some of those strategies for how a child learns to sound out words, I would have been a much happier 19-year-old. And wouldn't you like to see all 19-year-olds be happy? So I will turn it over to Michael, who is going to share with us what it looks like in one of our districts in Calistoga. And I will just leave you with, please go to R.O. Hardin if you haven't and see it in action, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay. How do I turn this thing on? I'll use the mic.
Yeah, you have to use the mic.
I was going to present sitting down until I heard Barbara. So I work in Napa County. I work in Barbara's county, so I get to hear her present a lot, and it's amazing. I'm taking notes. Barbara's amazing. Another round of applause for Barbara Nemko. So I'm a director at a small district with 800 students. Human resources, educational services, technology, special education. So I'm really busy. I don't know that I'm an expert in any of those things. Our ADA is 800. Anybody in here under 1,000 ADA? We're at 1,500. Okay. And so I am asking myself a little bit of what am I doing here with this esteemed panel and really this esteemed room? And I think I'm the voice of reason. To tell you what this looks like and how hard it is. This work of changing our practices to implement science of reading and structured literacy. If you worked at a school site, it's emotional work. You go forward, you go backwards. But I'll share with you our journey. I think we're at the start of this journey, but I can tell you how it's been going. So Calistoga is a special place. We have, last year we had 0 turnover on our certificated staff. Yep. I'd have to search my memory really hard for a teacher who really left. We had this one teacher one time, she went to Arizona because her husband got a job, but really almost every year, 0 turnover. We have over 95% return rate for our students. So we have very little student transiency, very little teacher turnover. A very high percentage of our students go to preschool, get preschool learning. A lot of that's through the state-run preschool, through our county Office of Education. We've got good data systems, good data culture. Everything's working, right? It really is a special place. And then you look at our performance data on English language arts, and we have the same exact problem everybody else has. Our students are not performing at a high level, the achievement gaps are persistent, and it drives me crazy because I don't understand it. We've got adopted curriculum for ELA that's approved. You know, what's missing? And we've got to do something different. So a couple years ago, as we're watching this, the science of reading conversation come back around, this energy across the nation around this discussion, we want to get in on that. Barbara gets excited about it. Our superintendent, Dr. Audra Pittman, gets excited. We want to do the work. The next step for us is how do we do the work? As a small district, we know we can't do it on our own. We need partners. For us, we're lucky that we were able to partner with the County Office of Education and their coaches. You may be in a big enough district where you can support this on your own, but for us, we needed partners. Our interest was structured literacy, and we've talked a little bit about it, but again, explicit teaching of language with kinesthetics, with oral components, breaking down words, explicit instruction in phonemic awareness, more Orton Gillingham, less Wonders, right? Though you probably need both. As we look to build capacity with our staff through the county, and Barbara talked about it, but Chartwell is an amazing place. It's a special school, and if you want to see structured literacy in action, it's the place to go to see teachers teaching it. What it can't give you, though, is what it looks like in a real-world implementation in a comprehensive school system, because they're so specialized, right? They work with students who have learning disabilities, reading difficulties, and it's a very unique place. It's not a comprehensive school campus. We then visited Hardin Elementary, which Barbara talked about in Hollister, and that was amazing to see a comprehensive school implementation. But their implementation is like the Cadillac model. They are doing it right with a tremendous amount of staffing and resources. So we're having a conversation around what does our model look like. Where we've started is to focus on K through 2 with lead teachers in those grades who are excited, who are interested. We're also doing some work with our junior high special education team because we know that our special education students, they're not reading anywhere near the level that they need to be reading at. But I do think that question about model is a really important one. If you're going to implement structured literacy, what does that actually look like on a day-to-day basis? It's small group instruction. It's one instructor to 3 students, 4 students, maybe 7 students. So what would that actually look like? And I think we need more schools and more models. We need to all be doing this work, or we need more schools to do this work so we can learn from one another. Another challenge that we are dealing with is curriculum. So as this conversation has become more intense, these curriculum companies have come out of the woodworks, right? And a lot of it's good stuff that actually was developed, like Chartwell, within these small specialized schools that were just developing the practices themselves. And then they said, well, let's put a curriculum together. So you look at the market, there's 10, 12 really good curriculum at least. So now what? How do we as a small school district choose which one? Our experience has been that the curriculum are all extremely similar because it's all structured literacy strategies, right? They're kind of all the same. They all claim to have like a secret sauce, which makes theirs the best, but it does make it makes it challenging to choose a curriculum when they're all so similar. And so something to consider. How will you choose curriculum? How will we work together to decide which curriculum we're going to choose? For us, our kind of guiding principle has been synergy within our county. Because we've got all the districts in the county really participating, we want to choose a curriculum that we're all using so we can visit one another's schools, participate in trainings together. But it's just something to consider, what this curriculum will look like. That's what I have to share. We're at the start of our journey. I think, we know our students need something different. I don't think that's a question. Is structured literacy the answer? Yeah, I think it's a part of the puzzle. And the question is, how do we do the work? And I feel like actually we've been kind of trailblazing. There hasn't been a lot of guidance. There aren't a lot of schools doing this work. So I think that's the next piece of this. And I would say, from the state level, when it's great to hear from Bonnie and Nancy. I think what we could really use as districts, right, is we do need guidance. We need framework. We need approved curriculum. We need to identify model schools. Maybe Calistoga will be a model school someday. But we need to be in this together as opposed to being, I think we have felt a little bit alone in the journey, and that's okay, but I know that we're all going to be a lot more effective if we're doing the work together. So that's what I have. Come visit our school. You can come visit anytime. Calistoga's great. Wineries. Spas. It's a great place. Geyser. There's the geyser. But yeah, come visit us anytime. Like I said, we're at the beginning of our journey. Come visit us in a year. Come visit us in 2 years. We're at the start of this work, but it is the good work to do. It's the important work to do. Our students deserve to read by grade 3, and we're all experiencing the same issue. And so we're all on the path to trying to do better. Thank you.
Thank you for being here and for presenting. It's for us at Breaking Barriers, and Amanda talked a bit about this at the end of the last panel, and Richard mentioned it. Imagine a world where literacy is our shared goal, where we're all trying to achieve literacy for children, where we actually understand the initiatives that the state has, the myriad initiatives that the state has to achieve reading for children, and where we see ourselves in that goal, where we recognize that the structured literacy work that the state is doing, the holistic, effort that they're making to connect all these initiatives so that they're not separate, so that we have one continuum of services trying to address literacy, that you can see yourself in that. No matter where you are in this room, no matter what chair you sit in, if you are sitting in the mental health, behavioral health, social emotional learning space, you're in that continuum. Because guess what? Children aren't reading by 3rd grade. Why? Why? It goes into factors that are so complex, right? The social determinants of health, poverty, homelessness, employment, housing, and literacy instruction. Who holds those resources? Who holds the capacity to address those root causes? Who? All of us. Does any one of us hold that? No, we only hold it together. So the point of really elevating literacy as a shared goal is we firmly believe that literacy can be a shared goal for the state of California, both at the state level and at the local level. And if we create a shared dashboard, like Amanda was saying, that's in it. And so you're all in it. So if you're sitting there thinking like, well, I really have never been a teacher, or I don't know about reading instruction or whatnot, we need to understand the work that's happening across our silos, and then we need to see ourselves in that work. Somewhere in there is every single person in this room. And we're going to have more talks tomorrow about literacy as a shared goal. And can Napa County make literacy its shared goal across education, probation, public health, private health, regional centers? You're all in this room. Child welfare, you're all here. So we're going to talk more about that tomorrow.